Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alissa Sklar. I'm the VP of Marketing at GIS Planning. And today we're going to be looking at reaching realtors, how to build stronger relationships with your community brokers. I am delighted to be here today with our guest presenter, John Wichman of Cushman Wakefield. Hello, John.
Hello, everybody.
So before I turn this over to a conversation with John, I just wanted to say a few things from our own perspective here at GIS Planning, because we, of course, work with hundreds of economic development organizations around the US, Canada, and now the world, as we're working with through the Financial Times with investment promotion agencies worldwide. And we have, in the course of that work, done a lot of facilitating of the relationship between economic developers and their local or regional commercial realtors. And so we do have some best practices that we would like to share. I just wanted to also draw your attention to the fact that we have been in this field for 20 years, so we really were the original disruptors when it came to corporate site selection with our product, Zoom Prospector Enterprise. Many of you are familiar with those. I see a number of clients in our participant list today, which always makes me happy. We did just release the beginning of this year, the brand new version of our Zoom Prospector Enterprise tool, which really completely redefined, once again, raises the bar for what corporate site selection looks like. And many of you will be familiar with zoomprospector.com, which is the US National Site Selection Portal, currently only available in the US, but it does have 1,000 plus variables on every community in the US, and all of our clients automatically have their properties from their Zoom Prospector Enterprise get automatically synced over to this free national portal. So they'll be available there for businesses who are looking to make location decisions and begin there with their searches. Now, what you see here on your screen is an example of a property report from the new Zoom Prospector Enterprise. And there's a few things that we are doing new here. Of course, you'll see the side-by-side mapping. So we really felt that was important for all of the property. This is just one property, but when you have the property results, it's a similar thing. You have be able to look side by side and then see them mapped out, look at the maps in different kinds of ways, so that you get a sense constantly of where this property is located. There are a variety of ways, as always, to share this. Click on the little hearts. You can share in customized folders. But a couple things that I want to point out here is that we have built in this primary contact for brokers directly into the property report. So it is now possible for an investor, a site selector, businesses looking to make a location decision to put their information right there and to reach out directly to the broker. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment when we talk about best practices, because I think this is really quite critical. And the second thing is you'll notice that we have a variety of map styles, one of which is now 3D, so it is possible to have a closer look and see in a different way actually what's going on around this particular property, what it looks like from the air. There are, of course, street views as well, so you can actually drop the pin in there and look, see what's next door, what kind of access trucks might have, for example, parking, all of those different questions that people tend to have. And then, of course, all of the property reports have been redesigned. This is an example from a part of an export. It's longer. We have hundreds of fields that brokers can enter. If the broker doesn't enter information in a field, it is not displayed as an empty field on the property report. So we do leave that up to the entry to see how much is populated. There's opportunities for multiple pictures, for additional attachments that can be put in there as well. And I did want to mention, because one of the pain points that we often have with economic development organizations, one of the struggles that we know many of them have, especially with the demise of Xceligent last year, is how do you get your property data into these online data tools? And we are proud to offer custom solutions to get your property data in there, no matter where you are located in the US or Canada. We work with a number of strategic partners, Real Massive, OfficeSpace.com, Spacelist in Canada. We also have a number of regional listing services. We can set up RETS feeds from large brokerages, and of course, manual entry is possible as well. And if you're doing automatic data feeds, they generally are scheduled to run on a weekly basis. We can modify that as needed. There will be reminders that go out to make sure that the list is always kept up and kept fresh. And our Director of Client Services, Jeff Sunnison, will work with you wherever you are to figure out the best solution for you. And manual entry, of course, is always an option if you have brokers or in-house want to be able to go in and do any modification. But we want to help make your life easier if that isn't the first choice for you. Now, in terms of best practices, some of the things that we have noticed over the years in our work with economic developers and with brokers is that we really feel that it's critical and the relationship between brokers and economic developers to really work on building that rapport. You could do that with meetings in-house, with different kinds of communication, make sure they're up to date on workshops and announcements and newsletters, all of the different things that are coming out of your economic development organization. And it shouldn't just be one-way communication, that you're also listening to what they have to say. So subscribing to their newsletters and keeping the ear out for connections perhaps on LinkedIn or other social media to make sure that you hear what's going on around them. And the other thing is a constant reminder, I think most economic developers know this, but it's good to keep top of mind that we really want to respect the expertise of our commercial brokers. We have a big picture, perhaps as economic development organizations, we work with elected officials. There's a strategic vision perhaps for the urban planning and long-term development of a community, but the brokers are the eyes and ears in the individual deals, and they really bring an incredible amount of expertise and history to all of these situations. It's very important to be aware of that and to take advantage of that, and vice versa, that they generally are very open to what it is that you're doing. The other thing that we really suggest is that an effort is made to introduce your local regional brokers to your online data tools, whatever they look like, Zoom Prospector or whatever they are, because they're really going to be happy to be able to use those tools, assuming that they're user friendly, so that they can look at things like demographics and consumer spending and map out different businesses and supply chain things. Is really useful for them to be able to know to take advantage of those tools. And really critically, not to cut brokers out of the conversations. One of the top errors that we see are economic developers who are unwilling or concerned about listing the broker's contact information on property reports. We always recommend against that. It is really critical that brokers remain part of the process and that they tend to feel threatened if that is actually on the horizon. And then you start to have these silos of conversations happening in different places. And ultimately the community or the region loses out, because that means that you're not getting that synergy of effort across the board. So including broker contacts on all online property databases, we really are very strong advocates for that. And looking at maybe strategic partnerships on place marketing initiatives that are going to be coming out from your organization, whether it's a EDO or a Chamber of Commerce or a city government office, to see how you can actually work with your local brokerages in that way. And so that brings me to our guest for today, John Wichman. Very briefly, I'll just read out a little bit of his bio. So quite impressive and I think very relevant to the kinds of things we're going to be talking about today. John is a multi-market account manager at Cushman Wakefield. He joined the firm in 2011 after working in the construction and corporate relocation business. He's an integral part of the brokerage team led by Tim Cahill, Sam Arthur, and Alex Brody, specializing in tenant representation for mid and large cap companies across North America and around the globe. They've completed transactions of various services totaling more than 7 million square feet. John leads their team's marketing and business development efforts and is key in designing solutions to help their clients strategically manage their real portfolios. Now, John has also formulated site selection strategies for strategic materials and Enersys for new distribution warehouses in the upper Midwest, and aided in the development and design global integrated facilities management solutions for Akamai Technologies, Osram Sylvania, and Kellogg's. So John is currently working on the management of the Bimbo Bakeries USA real estate portfolio, a disposition of plus or minus 1,200 acres for DP World in South Carolina, and another roughly 320 acres for Alliant Energy in Wisconsin. Welcome, John. We are very happy to have you here with us today.
Lisa, thank you very much for the wonderful intro. Boy, I got to talk to whoever's doing my bio. They're doing a good job on that. Appreciate that.
Well, certainly you have a lot of relevant experience for us today. And I thought maybe we could start off with sort of a general question is, as someone who has a extensive background in commercial real estate, worked with site selection, what do you really wish economic developers knew? What do you wish that they knew about this relationship when working with brokers?
Well, I think one of the things that's most important is that it is definitely a two-way relationship, and is critically important that we work together. And I think that on both sides there's value to be brought to any deal, particularly ones that are looking at larger area site selection as a casting a wide net of looking at multiple markets. So, full disclosure. My wife's a lifelong economic developer, so I may be a little bit unique in terms of my peers. So I know and have been very well trained that anytime we start a project, to start with economic development, be it local, regional, or statewide. And then vice versa on the other side of that, I think that the larger firms and even some of the smaller firms really can bring a lot of value in terms of technology and tools, and even just knowing the occupiers that either you're prospecting or the ones that are in your marketplace that maybe you want to try to expand those relationships. And I think that that's one of the ultimate things is there's a definite opportunity to leverage the two-way street of those relationships, economic development from a very local aspect, and then more from a kind of a global corporate perspective from the real estate firms.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. And actually, I think being married to an economic developer gives you a unique perspective because you maybe get a sense of what's happening on both sides. And I think that's actually really important because sometimes it seems like you have the same conversations going on in different rooms. Is that something that you've ever seen, or has that ever been a kind of frustration that you've experienced?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we always talk about. Anytime you're kicking off a project, whether it be, a site selection project, or if it's, putting some land up to try to attract occupiers, those sort of things, it's absolutely paramount to bring all sides of the table, bring all of the stakeholders. Those could be economic development, certainly, political officials, could be utilities, everyone who's got a vested interest in seeing a project go to a certain area, and get those folks all sitting around a table together to get those stakeholders aligned and get that train moving down the tracks together as soon as possible. And then one of the most important things that I could probably deliver to this group is that doesn't just stop with one meeting. You've got to set out and cast a plan to keep those communications, keep those comms open on a consistent, regular basis throughout the life cycle of any project.
Absolutely. And I think that's an ideal situation if you could get that everyone working together. Fortunately, it doesn't always happen. What are some of the common mistakes that you've seen over time in terms of maybe not having an optimal relationship between economic development and commercial brokers?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I can share a very relevant recent experience where we had all of these folks sitting at the table, and we had a local mayor from a city who wanted to see $25 jobs as the absolute entry point for any new project that was going to be developed. And the reality is that first of all, their labor force there just doesn't support that wage. And so, it's a great thing for that mayor to want to do and understand what's driving it. The reality is that we gotta set the right expectations, or at least start working towards the right expectations as to what is the right project on the site. Not to mention the site is ideally suited for more of kind of a warehouse distribution than it is some sort of a more technical job, which would lead to the higher wages. So that's just kind of one example of a number of them that it's important to get everyone aligned.
And that actually brings up a really good point, John, that where do elected officials fit into this relationship? We're talking about economic developers and we're talking about brokers, but there are more parties, more stakeholders involved here.
Absolutely. And I think that's when you get started looking at any project, you've got to understand who all has a vested interest in those things. And certainly elected officials are one of those. I always look to utilities, certainly as another one. And then even the surrounding business community, just because, we all in a room think that this is a great opportunity to bring somebody to an area? Does it really fit with what's going on in the local business community? So I think, that's another important piece that, again, we try to look at is in terms of what's the local business community think about certain new projects.
Okay, so that's really useful, and I agree with what you're talking about with the local business community, because I guess first of all, those folks really know what it's like to do business there, but they also provide some really important kind of local color to help make you understand that this is a specific community in a specific region that has all its own wonderful opportunities and quirks and possibly challenges, and that they can really bring something to the table as well.
Yeah, and I think, frankly, they can also really help with that, the elevator pitch, if you will, as you're going out. They're doing business in an area. They know, the nuances of what it takes to flourish in those communities. And so, again, that's just one of those, mutually beneficial relationships I think that is important to look at.
Okay, so let's say for you working in a commercial real estate transaction, an investor perhaps comes to you. At what point would you, as a commercial broker, especially someone who has site selection experience, which I think is not always the case for all brokers, but at what point would you choose to involve the EDO? What would you be looking for from economic developers?
Well, again, back to my comment about being married to an economic developer. It's one of the first things that we always look at. We just know the tools and resources that economic development has available. Particularly, the hottest and number one item everybody's looking at is labor. Those statistics are, definitely with the folks that are on this phone, and the most current and available and ready piece. That's why we start with economic development. And I think that, there's some bit of confidentiality and some things like that you have to, kind of work around. That's why you see a lot of project code names and things like that.
Right.
But that's certainly something that, our group focuses on and has really, frankly, been educating a lot of the other folks that we work with within our organization. We're a little bit unique to Cushman Wakefield with the number of clients and the number of projects that we look at and work on. But we've tried to, also educate some of our folks around the company that it's so important to partner up early to get an idea of what exactly all the tools and things and ultimately what types of incentives and things are available to support a project.
Okay, and Cushman Wakefield, certainly a very, very large organization, expertise everywhere. How is this relevant to smaller brokerages that may be in an area?
Well, I think what it is that transactions are done. We view it as on a very local level, and just because Cushman Wakefield is a big organization with lots of brokers and people and experts and things like that, it doesn't mean it's always the best person for a local market. So, in particularly in some of the smaller markets, that might present an opportunity for us to partner with. To bring a project to a local broker or a local economic development group that maybe not be on necessarily the forefront. And then, secondary thing is that just happened with us recently that there was a part of the country where we didn't have coverage, and frankly, none of the big companies had coverage, but we were able to partner up and form an actual alliance with this group. It happened to be down in the southeast. And so, there's all kinds of different opportunities there, and so, just because it's a kind of a local, call it a one-off broker, doesn't mean there's not still a chance to leverage the tools and the network that we have of 25, 30,000 customers to help your local markets.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good reminder, actually. One of the things that you said to me earlier when we were talking about this webinar really stuck with me, that your local brokers are the experts, the real experts on real estate in your community. And there's so many ways that economic developers can benefit from that kind of expertise.
No doubt, and no doubt, and even more specifically is not every broker is an expert in every type of property, or is not necessarily if you represent office or you represent industrial, those sort of things. So I think it's important to just kind of note that as well. But yeah, they've got, just a ton of knowledge and expertise, and every broker out there that I've ever met is tied into some sort of network, whether it be an SIOR or it's NAIOP or it's Cornet or it's IEMC and those sort of things.
Right.
And again, it's just the nature of kind of being that independent broker contractor. You've got to have those sort of resources. And so I think, regularly meeting with your local brokerage teams is very healthy for both sides.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to our listeners here today that we are happy to take questions. So feel free to, this is your chance to ask a question from a broker with the expertise that John brings to the situation. We're very happy to have him here with us today. Please feel free to put your questions in there. I'm wondering, John, what would you say to economic developers about how they can better utilize the relationship with the brokers? We were talking about how EDOs are doing their own place marketing and their own efforts to attract investment, but brokerages are doing the same kind of thing as well, aren't they? What could EDOs benefit? How could they benefit from that?
Well, I think it can benefit in a couple of ways. Number one is that most of the larger organizations, let's call it the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, have some sort of contractual relationship with a firm, big, medium, or small, to help them through, guide them through these processes and things like that. And again, I call it kind of the multiplier effect. For example, our stated kind of marketed number is we've got 22,000 corporate relationships with customers. Meaning that we represent them in some form or fashion across the globe doing something. And so, reaching in and just kind of understanding that, maybe understanding who some of the key folks are, it gives the economic developer kind of quick and direct access versus, trying to, kind of navigate through, whether it be LinkedIn or just, kind of general reach out or going to a seminar or a conference and things like that. Sometimes we can, skip a bunch of steps and save a lot of hassle and also save some time, which helps everybody out. So again, I call it, kind of the multiplier effect. At our company, we have, 1,500 folks that have raised their hand that said that I'm primarily industrial manufacturing focused, that represent a good portion of that, 22,000, clients out there.
Wow, yeah. That's really impressive. So in terms of crowdsourcing and having access to kind of a huge pool of expertise, that's a real benefit.
Absolutely, and on the other side of that too is that the services firms in a lot of cases are right there at the table helping and guide a lot of the decision making process. And we as a group, we track even our competitors and who does represent some of those big companies. When it comes to the smaller companies that you may be trying to attract and things like that, I think it really shows well that you bring some further expertise beyond your marketplace too, with a firm that can represent them in other places to show that you're not only just thinking about them in your neighborhood or maybe a company that's based in your town or your city or your area. If they've got locations in other places, again, continuing to be a value add where you're showing them, that you really are thinking about them in a different way.
Okay. We have a question about incentives on the scale of criteria that maybe investors might be looking at when they're trying to make a location decision: labor force, power, supply chain. Where do you think incentives lie? It's kind of a hot button question, isn't it?
Oh, it's definitely, I think, in the top 3, definitely in the top 5. We don't look at any new projects without giving some sort of consideration to it.
Okay.
I didn't mention earlier too about, rail and some of the transportation things and things are out there too. Again, that's back to bringing all the stakeholders to the table. But I would say definitely in the top 3, if not in the top 5, of every project. And we've got a very robust practice here, but there's a lot of great, independent folks that are out there, that are helping companies with that too. And it's critical that I've seen to companies being able to, get some of these projects over the finish line.
Are you getting a lot of questions about opportunity zones?
It's hot and cold. Occasionally it kind of comes up and then it, settles down a little bit. It's something that certainly I'm trying to do a better job to get educated on, and our group's trying to get better educated on. But it's kind of like where are the opportunity zones? Well, it doesn't fit exactly where our ideal location is. So let's, we're more focused on some other of the bigger business drivers than, the opportunity zone necessarily lays out for them.
Okay, got it. We have added opportunity zone layers to our various data tools. It's possible to search for properties just in opportunity zones, one of the filters. And on zoomprospector.com, it's now possible to also map out the different opportunity zones if that's something that businesses are doing. But as you say, sometimes, that's just part of the larger fit equation that needs to be looked at. So.
Yep, and I should have given you a prop. I should have given you a prop earlier. Love your tools, and we as an organization heavily invested and use your tools as well. And yeah, that opportunity zone layer is a great new feature. And like I said, it's certainly one of the levers that we look at as being one to pull. But these, as everybody I'm sure here knows, these are big complex things that have a lot of different drivers to them, and some of them you have no control over.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, actually, that kind of is a good question. How often, as a broker, are you taking advantage of the additional kind of research or data that is available in tools like Zoom Prospector when you're trying to work with a client and prepare a business case for them or answer their questions?
Great question, and I think that we have learned a lot in the last 18 months about the tools and technologies that are out there, and we try to do the best that we can very early on to bring all of those to bear. And I give the example of a company we were working with that they're a glass recycling company, and they were thinking about a new facility. And first question I said is, well, have you mapped out where your clients are, and can I see that map? And they said, well, we've not actually mapped where our clients are. I just was absolutely dumbfounded. They didn't know where their clients were based. And it actually impacted the swing by almost 2 states as to where they thought they should be to where they actually needed to be. So absolutely, being able to take, the tools that are available and then, make them come to life is critically important.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially with small and medium-sized businesses who can't afford the consultants to figure out the answers to those questions, having this kind of freely available data on a regional website or a city website makes it possible to help them answer that question. There's all this market intel in there.
100%. In fact, I just was having a conversation with another multi-market group that I work with down out of Atlanta, and they asked me that direct question. They said, "How do you go about, in an area that's not in your, core wheelhouse? How do you go about finding out labor information?" And my response was, "You call your economic development and start there, and work with them, work with the tools they've got, work with the, investment that all the folks have made on that, and that's absolutely number one."
So actually, when we're talking about data, this is a question that comes up sometimes with clients who are a little bit concerned if maybe they think the data doesn't reflect well on them. So there might be parts of country or region where there's either poverty or high unemployment, or they just feel that the data doesn't paint always the best picture of them, and they're worried about presenting that data online. And what we try and explain to them is that that is the reality of their region, and to many investors that represents opportunity, that is what investors might want to go in and work with in order to benefit the region. Is that something that you've seen at all, that kind of concern about how the data reflects on them?
I've certainly seen it be a concern. I haven't seen it be so negative that really think it's going to swing it. But in that case, I mean, my advice would be if this is the right place for all of the business reasons, look outside of the normal chains of what you look at. If you're going to need a technical workforce, what are the technical training, what technical colleges and those sort of things that fit and suit your business are available. So you got to just continue to be creative and come up with, that next level of kind of looking and things like that for areas like that. And that's what I would tell people if they feel that, they're maybe a little bit behind their, neighboring areas and missing out on projects because of that. Develop a plan to come up to, kind of we all know what the questions are they're going to be asked, labor force and availability of talent and transportation. And if it's, millennials, it's, can I live, next door to where I work and those sort of things. But build and design plans and start, sooner than later to get those, plans, moving down the track.
Great answers and great material for us to think about. I am mindful of the fact that we are at the end of our time slot here. Some fantastic questions from our participants. Thank you all for those of you who submitted questions. I appreciate that. John, I thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to come and speak with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely my pleasure. And thanks, Alissa, for putting this together.
Excellent. So I have contact information up here on the screen for John, for myself, for Jeff Sunnison, our Director of Client Services, who works with our clients to set up, to implement and to help put together custom solutions for property feeds. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. And as I said at the beginning, we will be reaching out with an email within the next day or so with a video recording of today's session and contact information for all of us. So I thank you for taking time out of your busy days to come and listen to me and John here today. And I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.